Hi, for your viewing pleasure today, I have got the second part of my July wrap-up video. So yeah, it's like, as I'm filming this, it's September tomorrow. So July was like ages ago, and I have to keep referring back to my notes about what I read and what I thought of it and what it was about, to be honest. So, I think I've got about 6 or 7 books to tell you about. And the first one was a bit of a disappointment, and that's A Convenient Marriage by Giovanni Charika. So this follows 2 Sri Lankan people from very traditional Sri Lankan backgrounds and like families who are very traditional. We've got Chaya, who is studying in England, and as a student she falls in love with a white British man. And then we have Gimhana, who, well, basically, he's gay. And the families don't know the situations. They are becoming under increasing pressure to find a partner, settle down, have children, all that kind of stuff. And obviously have a huge Sri Lankan wedding for all the families to attend. But Chaya knows that her family wouldn't approve of this white British man, and Gimhana knows his family wouldn't approve of him being gay. So they meet by coincidence at some kind of like relative of a relative's wedding, and they end up coming to this agreement where they will get married, and it's like a fake marriage, you know, a marriage of convenience. To put on a like front to the families, and then they get to carry on their lives like in secret, I guess. This was just a romance book, and that's not my thing. I don't know why, but I had it in my head that this was a rom-com, and I don't mind those, you know, if they're quite I don't know what the word, like just quite, I don't know, just interesting and funny and upbeat and things like that. I kept expecting like some silly mishap, or I don't know, and it never happened. Anyway, it turns out it's not supposed to happen. It was just me who assumed it was. I don't know. So it was not what I was expecting, but that's probably on me, not the book. However, with the book, I listened to this as an audio, and I did have to keep rewinding and going back and listening to bits because the timeline jumps like loads, and it's not just like a previous timeline and a current timeline. There was all in between and before, and like 3 years ago, and then 15 years ago, and then in the modern day, and then 2 years ago, and I just struggled to keep up with who was in what timeline and what they were doing and why that was relevant to current day. Yeah, I feel like I can't fully comment on this book because it's not a book for me, and I mistakenly thought it was. But just the pure fact of all the jumping around, yeah, it just wasn't for me. So 3 stars for that one. Then we have got Skitter and Zero Day. I do have Zero Day as a book, but I've left it upstairs, and I'm just too lazy to go and get it right now. So it's a picture, and then we have Skitter. I had planned to read Skitter this month in July anyway. I hadn't planned to read Zero Day, but as soon as I'd finished Skitter, I just knew I had to continue because Zero Day was the final and 3rd book in the Hatching trilogy, which was the trilogy by Ezekiel Boone about a plague of flesh-eating spiders across the world. It was fantastic. If anybody is into insect horror, and I think this is my favourite type of horror because it actually does frighten me, like it creeps me out. Like haunted houses or ghost stories and stuff don't really scare me. They're like, yeah, they don't really creep me out because to me, that I just don't find that believable. However, insects are everywhere, and yeah, I don't like insects, so this scares me. And I'm obviously not going to go into the kind of like the stories properly of these two books because they are the second and third in the series, but absolutely fantastic. I loved how like each book, it sort of had its own ending, and I guess you kind of could have left it there, but then it also had like a bit of an opening where you could lead into the next book. And I really liked that because it kind of felt like at the end of each book you felt a bit satisfied, like something had been tied up. And then you was then able to, like, if you wanted to, which I didn't, but you could take a break and then come back to it later. You didn't feel like you had to go straight to the next book. But I did because they were fantastic and I really enjoyed them. So yeah, I'm just really sad that I've now read them and they're done, and now I need to find something else. I'm sure I will, though, you know, it's not a problem. But yeah, I obviously gave those two books 5 stars, the same as I gave the first in the series. Absolutely love it, and now I want more. The next book that I read, or shall I say listened to, because I did this one as an audio, is Moon of the Crusty Snow by that author. I'm not going to try and pronounce that because I will just absolutely destroy it. I really struggle with people's names. So I first heard about this book from Kayla on Books and Lala. She spoke about it a few times, and it piqued my interest, partly because she does a far better job than me of describing books and it just sounded fantastic, but also because it's actually post-apoc, and the fact that it is own voices, and it's a story about a Native American reservation, and the kind of, it's sort of like the Arctic where you get these really long dark periods over the winter months, where there's very minimal sunlight, and it's an area that's quite remote, so supplies are like brought in bulk every few months and access is limited. So that kind of really intrigued me. Now what happens is the people on the reservation suddenly realise that all the power is cut off to the reservation, and they don't know why, and they can't really get off the reservation due to like weather and stuff to figure out what's going on. And they kind of just like think, oh well, yeah, it's blipped before, maybe we should just keep going and it'll be fine. However, time passes, and as the months go on, obviously they've realised something is very wrong. Food supplies are dwindling, people are becoming sick, there's people dying, and it is very bleak. Then to add to those like horrible situation, outsiders appear, and then they don't have the best interests in their heart for the people of the reservation. They just want to take advantage of the fact that these people are living remote, away from whatever disaster has happened in the rest of the world. Yeah, it was a very slow burn book. Nothing happened. It sort of felt a little bit along the lines of Leave the World Behind, a little bit, in that there's actually no like action, no event that happens, and I don't do well with those books because I prefer my books to have something happen and have, I don't know, like a bit of a pace to it, I guess, like something that makes me want to keep reading, and like some feelings, whereas this was just very I want to say like dull, but not dull boring, just like, I don't know how to explain it, just everything was just very like, it just felt very like low, the whole book. It was just very bleak and like miserable, and it just dragged on, but that's what it was supposed to represent, so it's supposed to do that. It there were parts of it that were interesting, and those saved it for me. So in the end, I gave it 3 stars. If you like books like that, it is really representative of what it should be, is what I'm trying to say. So it's supposed to represent these long dark winter months and people gradually struggling more and more, and that's what it does. But for me, I prefer bang bang bang. I like mine faster and with more action. So yeah, sort of enjoyed it and sort of didn't, but I'm glad I've read it because at least I know now, and it's not like niggling at the back of my head that it's one of those that I should give a go. Then we've got Wife Support System by Kathleen Wyman. This was another audio book for me, and it's contemporary, and there are some like laugh out loud moments, there are some funny things happen, but I don't think it's particularly supposed to be like a humorous book, but it has some of those moments. So we've got 3 women who are all, I guess, struggling with different aspects of their life in relation to being a mother, I guess, and a wife. So there's like one woman that is struggling with like her like work, family life balance and trying to build a career. Then there's a woman who is really struggling with like her own self-confidence and her body image and how that affects her relationship with her children and her husband. Then the third woman is struggling with just being alone. She comes across as like a really lonely person. Her husband has passed away. She's got 2 young children, and she kind of just seems to have no support system whatsoever. They all kind of like sort of make friends at the school gates, and then they end up going on this holiday together because they've not got anybody else to kind of go with, kind of thing. And then one of them comes up with this crazy idea when she's had a few drinks that maybe they should all move in together in the lonely woman's big B&B, and they'll just live as like a bit of a commune type thing where they all perform the role of like mother and like doing the housework and the cleaning and taking turns and stuff. And it is really, really good. Like I said, there's some laugh out loud moments, but there's also some like quite hard hitting stuff in there, especially things like feeling guilty as if you're not like a great mum, that kind of guilt of I'm going off to work for however many hours every day and leaving my children, and other people seem to spend all their time with the children and things like that. Then with the body image stuff, like lots of people experience those changes in the body when they've had children, and it massively can affect your mental health and your confidence. And so I was able to relate to that and the working thing, because I do work a lot. And then the other woman who just has no support system is quite lonely, and it was just like, so there's some, and there's also some I would say trigger warnings for domestic violence, and I think there's something else. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it is on the review on my Instagram page. I've got the link below if you want to check it out. There are a couple of and on my Goodreads as well, there's a couple of trigger warnings. But it was a really, really good book. I did enjoy it, and I would definitely read something like that again, especially from that author. I think she did a great job of it was like kind of light-hearted, but then it wasn't. So it wasn't like full-on emotional, hard-hitting stuff, but then it wasn't bubbly and skipping over things. It just was like really good meat in the middle kind of thing. So yeah, I gave that 4 stars in the end. Then I read Evacuation Road, which is like an apocalyptic story. So it's literally at the time as things are happening. However, in the book, you don't ever really get told what the apocalyptic event is. It just kind of talks about things like borders closing, people can't get home or get out of the country that they're in, and industries closing down, things like that. So there's a group of school kids who are on like a school trip in South America, and they get given like this evacuation date of when their flight will leave back to go back home. but it's like in another country in South America than where they are, and they have to get there. These three kids get split up from the rest of the like school group, and they end up having to do this journey to the evacuation point on their own. I think it was very unrealistic and very unbelievable, and I think that is what I just struggled with, because I think I rolled my eyes and sighed at the stupidity of things, like constantly almost, which is, it's not a good experience, but it was just very like, do you know when you're kind of reading something and you're like, that just wouldn't happen, because this is supposed to be realistic. It's not fantasy, it's not you know, completely made up. It's supposed to be a believable story about an apocalyptic event that could happen. And it just, the kind of like the things that the kids did and the experiences they had and the way they dealt with things, it just wasn't very believable. You know, they faced up to somebody who was like a drug dealer with a gun and got out alive just because they back chatted, and it was just like, I don't know how to explain it. It just wasn't great writing, I don't think, as well. It felt very unsophisticated, and I really struggled to get into the book, but I carried on going, thinking like maybe it's me and I'll get, you know, settled in and I'll enjoy it then. And it just didn't get any better, but it was like kind of tolerable at the same time, which is hard to explain. But so I ended up finishing it, and it just wasn't great. I have no idea where I personally would have pitched that book, because it felt quite young YA, middle grade type thing, with the unbelievable stuff that went on and kids having access to guns and stuff. But then there was certain things that were more older age group, with regards to like drugs and sex and feelings of attraction and stuff like that. So it was like a really difficult book to kind of get into the mentality of. Sorry if I'm at a slightly different angle. I ran out of space on my phone and had to delete some stuff so I could carry on filming. So yeah, Evacuation Road wasn't the greatest, and I probably wouldn't read another book by this author. I think from memory, I'm sure it's like a newish author or even debut novel. And I ended up giving it 3 stars. I guess that just means I didn't hate it and I didn't love it. Just average, which, yeah, is not good. And last but not least is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. So this was not the best Riley Sager book, I'm gonna say that. I haven't read all of his books, but I've read a few, and yeah, it just, I don't know. So this is about a girl called Charlie. She is at college, on campus. There's a serial killer that's like either in the town or on campus, and Charlie, her roommate, was killed by this killer. So she decides she wants to go home ASAP, back to her hometown and her family. She isn't willing to wait a few extra days for her boyfriend to be able to go home with her and like drive her there. So she decides that the best thing to do whilst there is a serial killer on campus is to get a lift with a stranger, because that's obviously what you would do in that situation. So she gets a lift with a stranger who convinces her, like, you know, is a good guy and he is heading in the same direction and they should share a ride. So off she trots, and Charlie is absolutely obsessed with horror films, and she's got like this like encyclopedic knowledge of horror films, but what makes it even more bizarre is that she has like these, I can't think, do they call them dreams? She basically like spaces out and her like goes into like a really vivid daydream of something happening, and it can last for ages, and then she comes round and she doesn't actually know if that really happened or if it was like a hallucination or a daydream or something. It's really bizarre. So basically what we're getting at here is that she's an unreliable narrator, and you just can't believe anything that she says has happened during the story, which means that you are constantly throughout the whole book doubting what's happening. You struggle to come up with theories because the information could be bogus, and she starts suspecting things of the guy that she's riding with, Josh, and thinking that he may be the killer, and then she's not sure, and then all these weird stuff starts happening, and she's not sure if she's imagined it, and we aren't sure if she's imagined it, and it's just one big massive mess, and you've got to try and work your way through it as a reader. Good for me is that I like the unreliable narrator. So even though it was difficult to follow because she's constantly like jumping into these daydreams or not, I did like that to an extent, because I like the fact that we don't really know what's happening as readers, and it's like all like a shock to us, the twist, and or some people reckon it's not, but for me it was like the twist was a shock. She makes some really friggin' stupid decisions that like just really frustrate you, and you're just like, why would you do that? Why? Like in horror films, in slashers, where like the one person goes back into the house to find the killer instead of running far away and ringing for the police, they go back, and she does stupid shit like that. Like she thinks she's in trouble but then goes back to like face more trouble. It's bizarre. But yeah, I ended up, I enjoyed it, and I think it all like landed on this unreliable narrator thing for me. I think the story was a little bit whoa, but it was all right, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I buddy read this with my friend, and she absolutely loved it. She was like further ahead of me in reading, and she was like, oh my god, have you read it yet? Oh my god, it's amazing. I didn't think it was that great, but I really did enjoy it, so I gave it 4 stars. And that is all the books that I need to tell you about for July. Thank you very much for watching. Please let me know down below if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them. So yeah, I will see you all soon in another video. Bye.